Okay, so hi there. In this small video I'm going to go into detail on how I adjust the gear ratios for any specific car. So here we have our test subject. This is the C1 Golf. Okay, it has absolutely stock engine, it has some weight reduction, and it has an 8-speed gearbox I stuffed with prototype parts to give me more room for adjusting the gear ratios. So when you go into, well, this menu, you have no really gears, okay, so those are just from another car, doesn't really matter. I need to adjust this gearing to the graph I see right here, okay? So to calculate the perfect gear ratios, what I will need to do first is to take a screenshot of this graph, okay? What is the most interesting part is really the torque graph. The horsepower graph is not really interesting because we will be able to calculate it later on. Okay, so once you take the screenshot of this, you can just open it in image editor. So I will be using GIMP, okay, and here it is. Okay, so we are in the GIMP. We see the same graph I just showed you here in the video editor, image editor, sorry. So now what I have to do, I have to reproduce this line in Google Sheets. Okay, to reproduce this line, the easiest way I found is to crop this area of the of the torque and horsepower chart, and they'll scale it to correct pixels just for the calculation, for the easier calculation later on. So what I mean by this, we just need the 0 point, we need 300 Newton meters point, when we need something like 7k point. Okay, so how do I do this? I just take my select tool, I will go like this. So you see, when it touches the line of 300, it grabs the line of 225. There's difference of 75. I take this selection of 75 pixels, oh yeah, 75 Newton meters, sorry, not pixels. I scale it here, and that means the last pixel of this selection is the 0 point, okay? So I just go down like this. This is our 0 point. On the y-axis, I mark it. Done. Now I need to do the same for the RPM axis, okay? So I take it like this, it touches the 2, it grabs the 1, I just move it around, the last pixel is the 0 on the x-axis, and I mark it. Here we have the intersection that represents 0, 0 point. So this is where your graph really starts, okay? Not here, not here, but basically here, okay? So now we also need to do the same for the 7k. This motor won't be going until 7k mark, but we will do it anyway. Okay, so I just mark the last pixels of the image we are going to crop. Okay, now I need the crop tool. I select the area, I adjust it to the coordinates 0, 0, 300. Oh, come on, like this, and to 7k. Done. So now what I can do, I can just press enter. The image is cropped. Okay, we have the essential information. Now we need to take the coordinates out of this. Okay, so I will just use the path tool, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to reproduce this like this. Okay, so I'm going to reproduce the line. Once I do this, okay, I will need the definitive number of points I will use, because I already have a template with the number of lines to this. Okay, so I know I will have to keep it around 77, 78 lines. So I will make sure I do not more than that on the graph. Okay, otherwise it's going to be too tedious. So normally by default you're in a layers section, you should go to the path section. Here you will have the path that we have already drawn. So this is not complete, but once it's complete you can just export path and export it to a file. I already did this. Okay, so this is pretty much it. Okay, so this way you will get the coordinates of the torque graph. Okay, now we're done with the jump. I discard the changes. So this is the notepad file I already have. So here we have the x-axis values in the first column, and in the second column is going to be the y values. So the y values represent the torque, but bear in mind this is in pixels. Okay, so we will have to transform it accordingly to RPM and torque. Now I will open my table. Okay, so I already took the values you see in the notepad and I put it in those two columns. Okay, so I put the RPM, this is the x-axis values, the first column in the notepad file, and the torque, this is the second column in the notepad file. I should maybe invert them for the sake of like making life easier. Okay, so now we have the values set up. Now we only need to calculate the torque and the RPM from it. So you didn't see it, I think you didn't see it, but I will show it to you. You see that we have in the notepad, we have actually the view box of 980 and by 50. So I scaled the image you saw earlier to adapt to this height and length for the easier calculation, because I know that by dividing 980 by 7 we will get 140, and we can divide 300 by 500 and get a multiplier of 0.6. So this will help us to translate this value to torque values and RPM values. Okay, so this is how I go about this two columns. So to calculate the torque, okay, we calculate it from this column. We subtract the values in pixels of the torque from 500, and then we multiply it by 0.6 because we were on a scale of 300 Newton meters. So we get the values of torque in Newton meters. Okay, this is already done. Next, the RPM. It's even easier. So you take the value in the pixels, you divide it by 140, which represents 1k RPM in pixels, and then you multiply it by 1000 RPM. Sorry, just okay. So and then you have the RPM correctly set as in the game. So you see I stopped at 6600, so this is pretty much where the engine would go. And from torque and RPM we can actually calculate the horsepower, so we don't need to plot the graph, like to take the coordinates and plot the graph from the game. Okay, we can actually rely on the data from the torque and RPM. So torque by RPM divided by 9549, this is the number that represents the well, this is just the intersection of the two graphs. Okay, so in imperial system it's gonna be 5252. Okay, that's where the graphs cross there because of the pounds per feet or something like this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Here we calculate in newtons per meter because, well, the graph in the game is in newtons by meter. So this gives us the power output in kilowatts, not in horsepower yet. And so to transform it from kilowatts to horsepower, we need to roughly multiply by 1.34. Okay, let's just edit the more precise number. So this way we get the horsepower. Okay, so what it all does? Well, don't look at the graph just yet. We have this small graph yet, which is basically what you see in the game. So this is just torque, horsepower, and RPM. We have the RPM here, we have the horsepower here, and we have the torque here. And it matches pretty well what we see in the game, except that, well, maybe the graph is chopped somewhere here and I allowed myself to prolong it because I used the race fuel and it's gonna increase the final RPM range. Now just put it aside. So how do you actually go from this to this? Well, it's not done yet. So now we have torque, horsepower, RPM. We only need torque and RPM for now. Now we have 8 gears, okay, because I set up my car with 8 gears, and we also have the final drive. Here we have the multipliers you see in the game, so those are torque multipliers or gear ratios. We also have the multiplier after the transmission, okay, so that's the multiplier of the torque that basically goes to the wheels, okay. So this is just the product of the ratio of the first gear and the final drive. This is how it works. It's basically two multipliers that multiply your torque and get it to the wheels. So you see there are values like this all across the RPM range that increase. Those are torque values in Newton meters on your wheels. So this is equally or not equally dependent on your differential settings divided by your driven wheels. If you have four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, this is gonna be split across the 4 wheels. Okay, so we repeat this process for all the 8 gears. Okay, so we have the torque values at any given RPM for every gear. So this is a good start because those values will be used later on. Okay, what's next? The next one would be better is to calculate the RPM at which the max power is produced. So without even looking at the numbers, you can tell by this graph that the maximum power output is gonna be somewhere at the end. Okay, you even see that it tells you on 197 horsepower at the end. Okay, so I made just a small formula that just filters the highest value of the power and tells me at what RPM it's achieved. Okay, peak horsepower RPM. It's gonna be this or this because the curve is flat. I will take this. Okay, we will need it later for the tractive curve. For now, this number is calculated. Don't touch it. Now, the next one. We need to calculate the circumference of the wheels. How do we do this? Well, let's get back to the game. Okay, so I just cut it. Okay. What do we use as wheels? So we already have all the data pretty much here. You have 285 millimeters of width. We have a profile of 30%. It's not millimeters, it's percent. The profile is the percentage of your width. Okay, and you have the rim diameter in inches. This is basically it. We don't need anything else. Okay, so now with this data you will be able to see how I calculate the circumference. Okay, I take the value of 285, I multiply it by 30%, okay, 0.3, and then I divide it by 25.4 millimeters. This is 1 inch, okay, so we transform it in inches. So this is the profile height in inches. Now we multiply it by 2 because there are 2 profiles on, well, because we calculate the effective diameter, and we then add 18 inches. This is just the diameter of our rim. Okay, then we multiply it by the p number, the constant 3.14. This is how we calculate the circumference. The circumference is calculated in inches too. Okay, now I need to find dependencies of torque and the speed of any gear. Okay, so you see here for the first gear I have all the same RPM, so this is just the copy paste basically from this range. We have the RPM range which goes up all the way to 6,600, sorry, and then we have to calculate the speed. Okay, so this is why this formula will come in handy to calculate the speed, and then we will just pass the accordion torque that we already have right here. Okay, So how do we find the speed? So we gonna be more representative this way. We take our RPM value, we then multiply it by 60 to transform it to RPM, but not RPM, but RPH, okay, so rounds, like rotations per hour. Then you multiply it by the circumference that we found earlier, okay? Then we divide it by the this number, okay? So this is just basically the number of inches in a mile, okay? Because we will calculate the speed in the miles per hour first. And then we also divide it by the final drive of every gear, okay? So when I mean every gear is just basically the number when the gear ratio is multiplied by the final drive, okay? So by 9 in the case of first gear. So once it's done, you will get at the speed in miles per hour, but it's not done yet because, well, I need to calculate it in kilometers per hour. So to transform miles to kilometers per hour, you just basically multiply it by 1.61, or if you're want a more precise number, this is gonna be it, okay? So this will finally transform the speed to kilometers per hour, and then you can just prolong this graph and it's gonna be done, but only for the first gear, okay? Now, once you've done all the calculations for the first gear, we can go on to the second one, the third one, and so on. So the principle is the same. You calculate the speed for any given gear. You just copy paste the torque. The torque has to be pasted every time in different columns, because otherwise Google Sheets won't pick up it correctly. I don't know if it's the case for LibreOffice or Excel. And then you also have the traction curve, okay? So to calculate the traction curve, we will just find the peak RPM at which we get, like the RPM at which we get the peak horsepower. In our case, it's 5,900, and we will just paste the value of the torque on the tractive curve, and this torque value that we paste corresponds to exactly this RPM. So just before the last one, basically you just in the case before the last one, you just paste the torque value that corresponds to always the same RPM. Okay, so once you have done all of this, you will come up with this graph. Okay, so I will show it to you how it looks like. Okay, so I'm just gonna choose this, then I'm gonna choose the last one. I'm gonna get up to get the graph up and running. So you get insert diagram. I've inserted the diagram, it's not corresponding to this so far. This is because you need to make a few tweaks. So you need to choose the smooth graph. That's one thing. Then on the x-axis you have to choose the speed in kilometers per hour. Then you have to get rid of on the y-axis you have to get rid of RPM and speed, and then you have something that represents this kind of the same thing. The only thing that's lacking is the black line, which is the traction curve. We actually have the points that are needed, but to make it appear as a line, we need to go to the style of the diagram and tick plot null values, and this is what's going to chain them together. Once they are chained together, you can go to the series or lines, traction curve, color, choose the width of the line, so I chose it a bit more narrow. You can also choose to make the points of the maximum horsepower appear, so that's what I did. So this is exactly what you see, like the one on the background. So this I can just delete it. So we are here with our torque graph for every gear. So now you clearly see that it's suboptimal, but it's still good enough. So this is already an adjusted gear. So I took the extreme values, almost the extreme values of 8 and 7 gear to make it more narrower, because I don't need a high top speed. This is the gear ratios I came up with just to just to make a correct adjustment for the good shifting. So I will show it to how it performs just in a second. So yeah, this is how I just calculate my gear ratios now. Okay, so you can move it around. So let's just pretend I put it F4. You see that the gap is too wide. Normally this graph should intersect. This is not the case for golf because it doesn't have enough RPM, or the graph is not really good. But the smaller I can go is 3.4 on that gearbox. So this is the lower I can put the first gear. So I have to adjust the rest accordingly. Okay, and the final drive dictates what top speed I'm gonna get, so I adjust the final drive mainly by the game. Okay, I also have this small graph. I didn't talk about it, but this is nothing new. This is something you can just reproduce easily from what you already did. So if you remember, we calculated RPM and the speed for every gear. You can just paste those values, okay? For any given RPM, you just paste the values of the speed for the first gear, second gear, third gear. It's gonna give you a graph that you maybe have seen already in some games like Forza or any other game that, well, that lets you see the transmission or the engine graph. Okay, so this allows you to see what speed you will get at which RPM, basically. By the spaces between the graphs, you can also judge how smooth it's going to be overall, but it's not essential. This is just to give you an idea if there's something wrong or no. So now we're in the game. As I said, we have stock engine, okay? We have the 8-speed transmission. I have put the gears that you just saw on the graph from my file. I adjusted the diff so it's not too stiff. Okay, so this is ready. C1 car. Just show you quickly how it accelerates, how it shifts. I know that the shifting point is somewhere, you see, it doesn't go above 6,200, 300, something like this. So I have to shift right after 6k RPM. I can actually shift even before that. So we already got the advertised speed by the game. Something like 238 or something like this. Can't really tell, but it seems like it. Yeah, it struggles. 240, but that's okay for the C1. That's pretty okay for the C1. So that's how I adjust my gears for any car. I hope this video was useful to you and that it will help you with your cars. So yeah, thanks for your attention. Bye bye.